Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? As Jason said, my name is Mike Benson. I've got every little boy's dream job. I get to break stuff for a living, and I don't get in trouble for it. I'm the captain of the Conquerors International Strength Team, which is a group of athletes who travel all over the United States and all over the world, and we do feats of strength. We do that to draw people's attention so that we can tell them about the real strength in life, in my life, and in our team's life, and that's a relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm an evangelist I'm the in-house evangelist at Resurrection Life Church in Granville, Michigan, and I've been there for like 12 years. And has anybody here ever had like one of those bad years, like the worst year ever that you'd rather forget? Anybody ever had one of those years? Yeah. Well, 2013 for me was the worst year. I call it the year from hell. It was around January 2013, and I had just returned off of my third or fourth trip to Australia, because we do a lot of overseas missions work. Traveled to 36 different countries all over the world. And I came home and I sat down on the couch, and my wife looks over at me and she says, "You look very tired. I think you need to go lay down." I said, "Yeah, I think you're right." So I headed for the stairs, and I started to go downstairs, and I fell down. I couldn't move. And I was trying to get up, and I remember grabbing onto the railing with this hand, and I thought I was reaching with this one, but I couldn't see my hand. And the last thing I remember is my wife standing over me with the cell phone saying, "You better not be joking around, I'm calling the ambulance," because I'm known to pull a prank or two. But I wasn't joking around, I was having a stroke at the age of 40 years old. And the ambulance came, and my living room was full of first responders, and thankfully my son and daughter were asleep and didn't hear a thing. And they got me to the hospital, and by the time I got to the hospital, I started to regain my movement. But they were asking me questions like, "What year is it?" And I'd say, "Anthrax." I don't know where that came from, but it slipped out of there somehow. And I was in the hospital for 5 days. And I was at the Halstein Center here in Grand Rapids. And at the end of the 5 days, I had 4 neurosurgeons, and one of them was a Muslim guy, which made me nervous a little bit, and they were standing in there and they were scratching their heads because my brain scan showed that I had damage in 2 areas of my brain. One area was about this big. It doesn't look like much, but when you're talking about on your dome, that's a lot. And it was directly on my speech center. The other area of damage was on my prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain that regulates your decisions and your strength. So the 2 areas that I use the most in ministry, my mouth and my muscles, were the areas where I had damage. And they said that when I left the Halstein Center, they said, "You shouldn't even be making noises right now, let alone speaking." And they wrote on my file, literally, "unknown phenomenon." But it was unknown to them, but it was known to me because I got my opinion from the great physician. Because God had a plan for my life. My life didn't start out very successful. I'm now transitioning from breaking things into speaking professionally full-time, faith-based and in the secular realm. And I'm actually a learning and development specialist with Robertson Wellness, that guy back there, that Joel guy. And but my life didn't start out very good, very positive at all. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, Southwest Side, and like a lot of people, where pain usually begins is in the family. My family was very dysfunctional. I haven't met a functional family yet. If anybody has one, just let me know. I'd like to meet you guys. And the one person as a young man that I looked up to, somebody to demonstrate to me what this thing called life was my dad. And my father and I now, we have a very good relationship where we've mended a lot of our bridges, but it didn't start out that way. As a young man, he would say things to me. He wasn't physically abusive, but he was very verbally abusive. He'd say things to me like, "You're nothing, you're worthless, I can't even believe I had you. And as a young man, that hurt deeply. And people deal with pain in different ways. I was raised in a Catholic school. My mom's side of the family comes from Italy. And the Bucceris and the Mascarellos can trace all the way back to Sicily. And crime ran in my family, basically. And so my mom, she wanted me not to grow up like my uncles and my cousins, who were all criminals. So she moved us from Detroit to the Grand Rapids area. She worked at General Motors. She was 30 years and out at General Motors. So we moved to Grand Rapids area. But how many of you know that changing your location does not have the inherent ability to change your life? Because change comes from the inside out. It doesn't come from changing your circumstances, it comes from changing your heart. And my heart was full of pain, and that pain manifested itself in rebellion. I started to rebel against authority, the first line of authority being my parents. And then I started rebelling at school. I was one of those kids, I spent so much time in the principal's office, I thought they needed to get me my own secretary. Because I spent all my time in the principal's office, got suspended from school, and I just didn't know how to deal with this pain inside, so I acted out. And I was a very angry young man. I'd get in fights all the time, I'd be the guy on the playground beating up the bullies, and then I became a bully. And then I discovered drugs and alcohol, which I thought was great at the time. And because of my metabolism, I was always, I could drink a lot more than everybody else. And for just a minute, when I was drunk or high, I didn't feel the pain in my heart anymore. But when the buzz would wear off, the pain was not only there, but it was growing, it was increasing. And then at the age of 16, when most of my peers were thinking about their driver's license, I was convicted of an armed bank robbery or illegal withdrawal from a financial institution. I want to put a white-collar bent to it. It was 1989, and it happened in Elto, Michigan. I don't know if some of you guys might remember it. We were all over the front page of the Grand Rapids Press. We got arrested at the airport, Kent County International. They turned the plane around, got it off the runway. We got off the plane, and the FBI, sheriff, everybody was waiting for us. The newspaper was there, the TV cameras and everything. I was the first person in Kent County that they used a new law called the automatic waiver statute, which said if you committed a crime, one of these 9 felonies as a juvenile, you'd skip the juvenile system and go straight to the adult system. And so at the age of 17, I entered the Michigan Department of Corrections. And you want to talk about an environment that's a very negative environment. That's probably one of the most negative environments a person can experience, is the Department of Corrections. And you know, some people say, well, you lose your freedom, you're gonna straighten up and you're gonna walk the straight and narrow. How many of you know that's not true? There's an 86% recidivism rate with prisoners nowadays. Going to prison won't change you. I went into prison and the government gave me a choice. They sentenced me to 4 to 20 years in prison. They said, you can go ahead and do all the programming we want you to do, finish your education, and you have an opportunity to get out in 4, or you can continue to act like an idiot and go ahead and do the whole 20. Well, after 2 years of getting in fights and getting myself in trouble, I spent a year of my time in solitary confinement, otherwise known as the hole. It's a place where they do not spray for cockroaches. So you have plenty of company to keep you warm at night. It dawned on me, if I continued this same type of behavior, I was going to end up doing 20 years there. And that was not something that I wanted to do. So I decided that I was going to change my life. I decided that my life was going to be different, that I was not going to become another file in the pile. So I started making some decisions, at least outwardly. I was going through the motions, jumping through the hoops basically. So I finished my education. I went to AA, NA, and all the other A's that they have in there for you. And finally, after 5 years, I was released from prison. And let me tell you, that was a good day. And the day I walked out of prison, there was nothing in me, not one iota of my soul that said, that was great, I can't wait to go back. And it's just like a lot of situations that people get into, a negative situation, whether it be a relational or family or job situation, they get out of there and they say, I don't want to go back to that, but they just can't seem to break the cycle, and they end up right back in there. I had changed a lot on the outside. I had gotten smarter, or so I thought. I had built my body up. I had gotten physically strong. But the one area that I neglected was the area of my heart. Because I took all the issues in my heart, I stuffed them down, I ignored them, and I built up a big facade. Until I faced the first challenges of life. Challenges of life have a way of bringing what's inside of you out when you're under pressure. I'll never forget my first job interview, because I had every intention on walking the straight and narrow of doing things the right way. I went to my first job interview. I wore a tie even, which is a feat of strength for me. And I put my application in front of the interviewer, and he was looking it over, and he said, Mr. Benson, there's a 5-year gap in your employment history. Care to explain that to me? I said, yeah, I was at Penitentiary Technologies getting an education. He didn't think it was very funny. Sorry, we can't hire you. The next interview, sorry, we can't hire you. With that rejection, the words that my father spoke to me as a young man came back to my remembrance. You're nothing, you're worthless, you're never going to amount to anything. And with all that, the anger and the frustration came rising back to the surface. And I went back to the only life that I knew, drugs and alcohol. So I went back into drugs and alcohol. It wasn't long before I was on parole. It was about a year and a half in, and I was already wanted for an auto theft. And then me and a friend of mine, we went on the run. And you guys want to hear America's dumbest criminal story? I got first-hand knowledge of it, all right? Me and a friend of mine, a partner of mine, we went, we were in Indiana, and we robbed a gas station. This was no ordinary gas station. This gas station was directly across the street from the Boone County Sheriff's Department. 2 blocks down from the state police headquarters, and the owner of said gas station, the former sheriff himself. And it helped us in our getaway, because when we got away, I found out later that dispatch, they actually got the call, and they're like, come on, Tom, quit screwing around. Who's stupid enough to rob that place? Right here, Dumb and Dumber. We got in a high-speed chase, we got in a crash, we got out on foot, and we're running around in the fields of Indiana. There's helicopters everywhere, they're setting up a perimeter, and we knew we had to get out of that perimeter, so we got out of that perimeter, stole another truck, and made it out of state. So as you can tell, it's a miracle that I'm even here right now, because I was on parole for an armed bank robbery, and I had armed robbery charges, stolen vehicle across state lines. I mean, I had everything against me. My life was basically over if they ever caught me. And I went to Florida. That's where all the fugitives go, south to Florida. And I was working in sales, door-to-door sales. So I'm very leery of salespeople, especially door-to-door salespeople. They come to my neighborhood, I'm like, you keep on walking. And so I finally got caught. You know, God had a plan for my life from day one. Even though I was not aware of that plan, He had one for me. And I remember the police would pull me over. I'd be out on territory, walking territory, and they'd come, and I'd give them a spiel, because I've always been very good at running my mouth. And I'd give them a spiel. I'd tell them a false name, switch my Social Security last 2 numbers around so it was easy to remember. And then I'd joke with them and spray their car and try to sell them some cleaner. And they'd say, well, just don't sell in this neighborhood anymore. And they'd go. I've had several encounters with law enforcement. But I'll never forget this one time we were in Sarasota, and this older police officer pulled me over, and he kept looking at me funny. And I don't know, but I believe now that he was a believer and that he was listening to the voice of God. And he was looking at me, and I was telling him, and he just kept looking at me funny. And he said, would you mind sitting in the back of my car while I run your information? And for a split second, I thought, uh-oh, it's time I better run. But then I was thinking, nah, this is not the neighborhood to be running, and there'll be cops, they'll be on me like white on rice here. And he's not putting me in cuffs, so okay. So I got in the back of the car, I sat in there, he's running my stuff, and he puts it in drive and starts driving. I said, what's going on? What's happening? And he said, you can sue me later if I'm wrong, but something tells me you're not who you say you are. And I was busted. And so I was placed in Sarasota County Jail, and I was sitting there and I was waiting. By then I found out where the gas station was located that we robbed, because the power was out on that side of the street. We didn't see the sheriff's department. And so when I found out about Indiana, that was the last place I wanted to go. But where did I end up going? Straight to Indiana. And they put me in, I got in there, and I'll never forget, the guys were standing around, the jailers were standing around, they're like, oh, you're the guy we were chasing around in the fields all night in the rain. Yeah, we got a cell for you. And they gave me a cell with a picture-perfect view of the gas station. So I'm in this jail cell, and I come to a turning point in my life. There's certain times in your life where you can look over and you can tell where there was turning points, tipping points. These are times in our life where we have monumental decisions to make, and the decision that we make can cause our life to move in one of two directions. I was at one of those points. All the culmination of my life, all the pain in my heart was coming to a head, and I was pacing in my cell. And then, of all the times in my life to remember these words, I thought this was the worst time, but I remembered, of all things, some words spoken to me by some guys, some fellow inmates that I was locked up with my first 5 years. And I'll never forget these guys, because they were different from all the other prisoners. They walked around and they always had smiles on their faces. And usually when somebody's smiling at you in there, it ain't good. But I found out these guys were, I call them holy rollers, Bible thumpers. They'd always carry their Bible under their arm, and they'd say weird things to each other. They had weird greetings. I thought it was a gang sign. They'd say, praise the Lord, brother. Hallelujah. How you doing? I'd be like, man, what's up with you guys? And I got to be friends with one of them. His name was Kurt. And Kurt was, he was a cool guy. He was very athletic. We liked to play full contact volleyball, full contact ping pong. Everything got full contact in there. We got a little heated in our competition. But Kurt would always drive me nuts, because he'd always be telling me things like, Mike, don't you know that God has a plan for your life? Don't you know that he sent his son Jesus to die so that you could live and have life? And I'd say, yeah, Kurt, I know all that. I was sprinkled when I was a baby. Me and God, we're down like 4 flat tires. I don't need that. I don't need that Jesus stuff. And so here I was these years later, and I remembered the words that they spoke to me. And I took all my anger and all my frustration, and I took it out on God. I said, God, if you're so good, if you love me so much, if you've got this great plan for my life, then how come my life is so messed up? And it was the first time I ever heard God's voice. And it wasn't Charlton Heston booming out of a cloud in the corner of my cell either. It was a still small voice. And he spoke to my heart. And he simply said, call on me, son. Call on me. When he said, son, something in my hardened heart broke. My emotions were shut down at this time. My heart was so hard I hadn't showed any emotions in a long time. I started to tear up. I got on my knees in my cell. I raised my arms out and I said, God, I've ruined this life. There's nothing I can do with it. I surrender. It's yours. You take it. And the way I was raised, I thought I had to confess every sin I ever committed. So I said, I'm sorry I pushed my sister down when I was 4. Sorry I put the cat in the dryer when I was 6. I was there for quite a while. But when I got off the floor, nothing changed around me, but everything changed in me. Because for the first time in my life, when I looked into my own heart, instead of pain and frustration and anger, I had a peace, and I couldn't understand it. And I had the biggest smile on my face. See, my freedom didn't come the day the government let me out of prison. My freedom came the moment I let Jesus Christ into my heart. That's when my freedom came. And so I got up and walked out of my cell, and there was a Bible volunteer. He wasn't a pastor or an evangelist or anybody, just a regular, he was a retired potato farmer, would come in and bring his Bible and teach Bible lessons. And usually when those guys came in, everybody else scattered. They see that Bible and they'd be like, oh, time to go. I walked up to him, shook his hand. I told him what had happened the night before. And he said, son, you've been born again. I said, I don't know what no born again is, but it sure feels good. And he started to mentor me, and I started to get into the Word of God. And I started to find out what my true identity was in Christ Jesus. And I found out that God did have a plan for my life. And it wasn't to do me harm, it was to do me good. It was to give me hope and a future. And I thought my dream was dead, because I had a dream as a young criminal. And it wasn't to make a bunch of money or be famous or anything like that. But my dream was to someday be a family man. Because even in the turmoil of my family environment, something in my heart told me that life could be better. And I wanted an opportunity to be a father, to be a husband one day. And I thought that dream was dead. I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And so I was in Jackson. Long story short, I wrote a book. It's called More Than a Conqueror, Conquering Your Past. You can read all the details in there if you want to get a copy of that. But long story short, I went through a bunch of legal trials and pleading guilties, and I ended up only doing 6 years in prison. But 4 years before I got out, I met a very strange individual. I went to service, and usually in there, you don't get to pick. You know, you either go to Protestant, Muslim, or Catholic. I went to Protestant, and you don't know who's going to be coming up from what denomination. One time I was sitting there, and this African-American guy comes in, and he's standing there. We never seen him before, never met him, didn't know who he was. He's standing there, and he's looking around, and he's just standing there for like 3 minutes. And we're like, come on, man, we're ready for a message or something. And then he looks at me, and he says, you? I said, me? He said, yeah. He said, come up here. I said, all right. So I walked up here, and he said, this is what the Lord says. He says, you're going to get out of here. You're going to be an evangelist. You're going to travel the world, and you're going to win millions of souls for Jesus Christ. You're going to meet your wife before you get out of prison, and you're going to write books. Now go sit down. I was like, whoa, all right, that's kind of heavy, man. And 2 years later, I met my wife, Stephanie. She took a chance. My sister and her lived in the same fourplex, and she was in ministry downtown Grand Rapids, and she heard of my aspirations for ministry, so we started visiting, and I'll never forget the first time I saw her. She walked in, and I felt like the Lord was saying, that's your wife. And I was like, yes, hallelujah, there is a God. And until after our first visit, I made the mistake of writing her a letter and told her what God told me. That didn't go over too well. And October 31st, 2002, right on Halloween, I walked out of prison for the very last time. I think it was God's way of telling the devil, thought you had that one, huh? 8 months later, I married my beautiful wife, Stephanie. I've now got 2 beautiful children. My 10-year-old daughter, Sophia, she's a daddy's girl, and she ain't never getting married. Some little young man comes over there talking all that stuff. I'm going to be like, I've been to prison once, homeboy. I ain't afraid to go back. Oh, what's those piles in your backyard, Mr. Benson? Don't you worry about that. No. No, I've got a strategy for all of you who have daughters. I take my daughter on dates. As she gets older, I take her to more expensive restaurants. I open the door for her. I set the bar high. That's what you got to do with daughters, but I'm hoping that she never gets married. She's still at that stage where she doesn't like boys, and I like it that way. And then there's my son, Riley. He's 8 years old. The dude is a beast. This kid he's like 10 pounds heavier than his sister. I'll be overseas, I'll come back, I'll have jet lag, I'll come and sit in my favorite chair, I'll be all tired, and here he comes. He'll square off. You want a piece of me, Dad? Man, it's on. WWE in the living room, man. All over the place. He is just like his dad. He's just like his dad. I've got the greatest job in the world. I've got a team of athletes. There's 7 athletes. And these are real friends. Real brothers in the Lord. They got my back and I've got theirs. And we've been to war together. We've been all over this planet. We've been through a lot of trials and tribulations, and we've seen a lot of things happen, but we've seen God move in a mighty way. But just because you're a believer in Jesus Christ, it's kind of like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You guys know that story from the Bible? They were brought before the king, and they were told to bow down and worship the image, and they refused to do that. And I believe we're coming to a point in our culture now where being a Christian is not going to be so easy anymore. And I know we live in West Michigan. There's a church on every corner here. But the culture is turning very negative toward Christians and toward believers. But Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, they said, we're not going to bow down to anybody. And they said, well, we're going to throw you in the fire. And they said, well, King, our God's able to deliver us, but even if he's not, let it be known that we won't bow down to anybody. I'm paraphrasing, but God didn't promise them that they would never go into the furnace. But when they were in the furnace, God was right there with them. Because they went in there bound. When they walked out of the furnace, they were unbound. And sometimes the furnaces of life, the trials and the tribulations, they're not by God's design. They're usually by our own. But in the midst of them, if we'll cry out to God, he'll be there with us. And that same fiery furnace can help us get free of the bondages that we were in. It's like my stroke in 2013. I tell people all the time, when I was in prison, there was nothing, I didn't sit there and go, oh, this is great, this is going to be great for my future. People are going to want to hear my story all over the place. I didn't know it at the time. The same thing with the stroke. I never thought it was going to turn out to be anything good, but me, I'm the type of person, I start studying everything. I started studying the brain and what's going on. Then I met this guy, Dr. Joel Robertson back there, and found out he was a brain guy. He knew everything about brain chemistry, and I got hooked up with him, and next thing you know, I'm doing workshops for companies on brain chemistry. But the point is that no matter what you're going through, as a believer in Jesus Christ, man, we're going to go through stuff. It's going to happen. Guaranteed. We live in a fallen world. We live in a culture that is totally negative. We are going to go through the stuff. We're going to get persecuted. But if we keep our eyes on Jesus Christ, those persecutions, those trials, they have the ability to make you stronger. Stronger in your faith, stronger as a family man, stronger in life to help other people. So that's basically my story, and I'll open it up now to any questions, question and answer, Q&A.
Yeah, we've got time. Feel free. He's an open guy, so challenge him with as many personal questions as you can.
Yeah.
If you want to see him break something or bend something, he'll do that.
Yeah.
How'd you get your first job?
How to get my first job? Okay. So I got out of prison, and same thing happened the first time I went in. I went to an interview. Well, we can't hire you. We can't hire you. But this time, instead of folding to the pressure, I stood against it, and I just kept trying. I didn't give up. And my first job, I was a welder by trade, and I knew a guy who was a foreman who was a believer, and he gave me my first job as a welder, and then I became a roofer. And you know, I had this call of God on my life to do ministry, and I thought I'd get out and the limousine would pull up and I'd go right into ministry. Didn't work out that way. So I just had to keep going and keep going. And then while I was going to men's breakfast, Iron Sharpens Iron at Res Life, I met the founder of the team, the Conquers, and then I started going out with those guys. And 9 months later, he left to be a pastor in Texas, and he gave me the team, and then I got licensed and ordained, and been in ministry ever since.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
How do you approach the topic of your history and with your kids?
With my kids?
Yeah, is it something that you waited to talk to them about, or is it just part of life?
No, my kids, I take the approach of, obviously I'm age appropriate with them, but I take the approach that I want them to know about things. We talk to them, we're very open, instead of saying, oh, that's for adults, that's not for you to know. We try to talk to them now, because the way this culture is, especially with the iPhones and everything, you know, they're going to get exposed to things. And so we rather teach them ahead of time. And we don't tell them, don't touch that, don't do that. We give them options. We tell them, this is a decision you make. If you make this decision, this is what can happen. If you make this decision, this is a good decision. So we kind of take that approach. You know, no one goes to school to learn how to be parents. So we just, a lot of prayer, a lot of reading of the scripture, and a lot of trial and error, basically. Yeah.
Can you share a couple of things like the Philippines and stuff? I mean, I know those things and the impact that your ministry has and how it works. We've been on several trips to the Philippines. Has been very crazy experiences for me in the Philippines. It's the first time I actually saw a man get killed. We were in a 4-man caravan, and we pulled up, and some guy went running by us, and 4 guys came behind him, and they gunned him down right in front of us, like from me to that platform right over there. And found out later the next day that the guy who got shot was a hitman, and the 4 guys who shot him were the brothers of one of his victims. So that took a little bit of the sting out of it. But the enemy was trying to stop our work there, because God has done some amazing things through our ministry. One time we were we had just come from Leyte, the island of Leyte, and we were eating fish heads and rice for like 10 days. And we got back to Manila, and we were like, we want some food, we want some American food. So we found a Chili's, and we were like, yes. So we went into Chili's, and we're in there, and I had this other evangelist with me. His name was Clint Harima, and he's kind of crazy. And we're sitting there eating, and he looks up at the bar, and there's an Indian guy from India up there, and he's got one of those boots on, you know, his legs like that much shorter, and it was all twisted, and he was up there with some young Filipino, and I was eating my mango shake, and Clint's like, hey, look at that guy, let's go pray for his leg. I said, Clint, you go pray for him, I'm going to eat, man. We've been praying for people for 10 days. And then my friend Larry and I were sitting there, and he taps me on the shoulder, and he says, look, and Clint's up there at the bar in Chili's, got this guy's boot off, got his bare foot in his hands, and he's just smiling, and the guy's up there 3 sheets to the wind just laughing, and his girl's laughing. And he's praying for this guy, and right there in Chili's, right in the bar, this guy's leg just swoop straightens right out. Right in front of everybody, just straightened right out, was normal. The guy gets up off the bar, he's just freaking out. He's jumping up and down, kissing Clint on the head, and Clint brings him over to the table, sits him down, and the guy looks at me, and the first thing he says out of his mouth, I'm Hindu. I said, oh, okay. I said, have you prayed prayers in Hindu and to your Hindu gods? Yep, many times, and telling me all this stuff. He was a doctor or something, so he came from affluence over there. And I just told him, I said, I'm just going to be blunt with you. I said, the reason your leg is straight right now is because of the name above every name, the name of Jesus. And do you believe in that it was because of him? And he said, yeah. And I led him to Christ right there. And then I learned a valuable lesson there, because there was a guy from Australia sitting at the bar, watched the whole thing, saw the whole thing, witnessed everything, heard the prayer, everything. And I was full. I said, well, I might as well go witness to him. So I went up and pulled up to the bar and sat next to him, started talking to him, and he just denied everything. He wouldn't have anything to do with Christ, didn't want anything to do with the Bible. I sat there with him for an hour. So even if a lot of people nowadays ask, well, how come God is not doing miracles all the time here? And surely more people would go to him. No, I think Jesus said even if the dead were raised, that people won't believe him because they have the gospel, they have Moses and stuff. They don't believe the word. So that was a profound impact on my life. And then one time we were in Cambodia. We were doing an outreach in Cambodia, and we got audience in front of the number 2 guy in Cambodia. Now over there, because of the Khmer Rouge, they had the Khmer Rouge out in the jungle, and they brought him in, made him part of the government. Well, this guy was one of the Khmer Rouge. And this dude, you looked at him and you could tell, ooh, this guy is not nice. And yeah, so I've had plenty of crazy experiences, and the Lord has had me in some crazy situations.
What do you think about most companies have a policy probably that we don't hire ex-cons, especially that have committed a felony.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a closed door. I mean, it's
Yep.
catch-22. You're supposed to go out and get back into life, get a job. You can't get a job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you see any hope in that area? Were you involved with prison fellowship or
Yep.
things of that nature? I mean, do you see anybody willing to give people jobs?
Yeah.
Or, if somebody who was like you came up and asked you for a job, you said you're reluctant to let salespeople
Yep.
into your house. I mean, so how do you deal with that?
That's a good question. I'm involved with Prison Fellowship quite a bit. I'm a poster child for them. I do quite a bit of speaking for them. And I actually got to tour prison in Ionia with Chuck Colson before he passed away. And that was a phenomenal experience. But you bring up a very valid point, because guys, there's been a couple guys who've come to our team, and our team has an extensive rookie policy. They have to sign up to be a rookie for a year, and we test them, and we want to make sure their character matches their biceps. And we've had guys who've come, and they think because they heard the story that I was an ex-convict that I'm just going to be open arms, and I'm not, because I know. A lot of the guys in there, they're doing the jailhouse religion thing. I've seen it over and over. Oh yeah, I'm all about it, and then they get out, and then they go right back to their ways. And I think it's tough for anybody who's got a felony to get a job, but I think they need to know and they need to learn. That's what I try to tell them too. I try to, when I speak at prisons, I tell them, look guys, it's not going to be easy. That's why you need God in your life, and you need to have a real relationship with him. It needs to be genuine, it needs to be authentic, and you got to really mean business, because he's the only way you're going to make it in life. And there are some companies that give guys a chance and they get burned. But then there's guys who, I know I got some businessmen at our church who said, I'm not hiring anybody from church anymore because after break time they find them out back reading the Bible saying, oh, I gotta pray and get stuff from the Lord. So it comes down to character. And there's a lot of guys in prison who actually should not be there. And then there's a lot of guys who need to be there. So it's just a matter of discerning.
Anybody else? Thanks a lot, Mike.
You're welcome.
That was great.